Hello and welcome to this new and activating episode of the Sovereign Society podcast. I got Tiaga Prem here, and I'm super stoked because I was thinking today before our call, all of my Kundalini yogis, they're all from Canada. Like, I shit you not. It's like my Kundalini community, like they're all Canadians. It's so funny. Like, you're the third Canadian Kundalini yoga teacher I've had on this podcast. It's so great. So thank you for being here and for keeping the hat on for us over here. You're like, you guys are like the turban of like America. Like,
and Mexico's the beard.
yeah. Oh my God, I love that so much. So thank you so much for being here. And
thanks for having me.
yeah, I know you're also the co-founder of the Dharma Temple in Vancouver, which I know someday I'll be teaching sooner than later there.
Yes, we'd love to have you.
Yeah, so I would just love to hear, like, what is your intention for creating a sacred space for this new paradigm of Kundalini Yoga? Because I feel like there's so much of the respect of, you know, the ancient teachings of Kundalini Yoga, but I feel like now that we're in the Aquarian age, we're seeing a lot, like an evolution of how the teachings are really being shared and like who the person is. Like, I don't know, it's been a very evolved kind of experience that I've been witnessing around Kundalini Yoga and how the teachings are still being shared to be applicable to the times that we're in now.
Yeah, I think maybe I'll try not to do too long-winded of a version here, but I think some background on how the temple came to be would maybe put it into perspective as to why we do what we do and how we serve. Like we look at the Dharma Temple as an entity, like a goddess that we serve. It's not our business, or it's not, you know, my wife and I center or anything like that. We're serving the Dharma Temple as an entity. And that's sort of how she turned up too. It's like, you know, I've been teaching and practicing yoga for 20 years of my life. And we used to have a previous center here in Vancouver. And that center was started by, I had a student at the time who was like, I really love your teachings. We want to open a center. My partner's got a lot of money. And they even used the words like, we have unlimited resources, which to me now, like looking back, it's like that was a major red flag. Because when somebody says we have unlimited resources, like from a spiritual standpoint, yeah, that's true. But when somebody's telling you, you can do whatever you want and we'll pay for it, that's kind of a, you know, let's just take a moment, read the fine print here, you know what I mean?
Yeah, so, that's part of the lessons too. You know, it's part of like, sometimes we have to go through those experiences to really learn, because we learn from experience.
For sure. And so I was like, okay, let's do it. Let's open this place. We opened the place. And at this time, I'm not practicing Kundalini Yoga at all. I have a background in academics, a degree in comparative religious study with a focus on yoga philosophy. I was practicing a lot of asanas, and mostly what I would do is like go into trainings and teach people about what yoga is, where it came from, yada, 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 but no connection whatsoever to Yogi Bhajan or these teachings or anything like that. My wife, when she got pregnant, she got like many pregnant yogis do, she got the Gurmukh pregnancy book, and she started doing the techniques. And I was kind of like, yeah, that's your thing. I'll just carry on with my thing, whatever. And while we were dealing with this, the studio was great, the community was great, but we kept coming up with problems with having investors and them saying, well, we have the money, so we get to make the decision. And when you're serving a spiritual community, it can't be all about the money. We definitely need money, but that can't be the driving factor. So we came up against some major roadblocks with that. And then what ended up happening is Guru Singh came to Vancouver from Los Angeles to give a talk and teach a yoga class. And a friend of mine who used to live in LA was like, you got to go see this guy. You're going to love him. He reminds me of you, that sort of thing. And I was like, okay, whatever, I'll go check it out. And we had gotten to the point with the business where it was like so much pressure with these investors that I was having a tough time managing the pressure and just like checking out. Like, oh, instead of leaning into my practice, I'll lean into drinking with my friends to handle the pressure and that sort of thing. And I had a new baby, so that was a transition time. Lots of pressure at work, just like not coping very well. And I mean, I can look back and say what a great blessing, but at the time it was super intense.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went to this workshop with Guru Singh, and I think the class was like 3 hours, and we maybe did like 30 minutes of yoga, and he just talked the rest of the time. And I was just like mesmerized by him, and was like, I could do that. Not in like, I could do it better than he can or some kind of thing like that.
It's a permission slip. Yeah.
Yeah, I could see myself in him. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to reach out to this man that I don't know with the long white beard and turban and see.
I love him so much.
Yeah, he's so beautiful. And we were just with him in Seattle last weekend.
He's like one of my favorite teachers.
I know. He's so great at like reminding me too, like I've got so much great work ahead of me, because he's exactly twice my age. We were both born in March. So I can like see the road ahead of me and be like, I've got 36 more years to like get this stuff done, so I don't feel like I have to hurry.
Yeah, I had a really wild experience last time I was in his class. I was with my brother Luke Story, and we were at Satnam Fest, which is like just down, was now not anymore, but down the street from my house. And
oh yeah,
we were front and center watching Guru Singh, and then that night I had like an exorcism in my sleep.
Crazy.
Yeah, so like the teachings he was talking about like really cleared a lot of like really deep blocks in me, that like I had an exorcism in my sleep that Luke had to call the paramedics. Like,
whoa.
Yeah, I was like vibrating for like 20 minutes, and I was like, oh my God, the wizard. I like when I see Guru Singh, I see like a wizard. Like
he's such a wizard.
It's so amazing. But like, yeah, it's interesting because, you know, a lot of those teachers, they started when Kundalini first moved, you know, to the West in the 60s. And I feel like there's kind of like this like passing of the torch that's kind of happening.
I agree.
Yeah, there's like a passing of the torch, but also the importance of keeping the integrity of the teachings.
Yes.
Because that's what's worked, you know? And so it's been really cool to see, you know, I do a lot with like business coaching with Kundalini Yoga, and like, to me, my view is to see, I was even like really feeling this in my sadhana this morning, was like my vision of like what Kundalini Yoga is, like you said, it's like the new cigarette break. Like people, like instead of like going to cigarettes to mask like whatever's coming up, or like going to the bottle, it's like, let me just sit for 5 minutes. I can do ego eradicator for 3, and like,
for sure,
game changing.
For sure. And even the power of the mantra, you know, to understand, you know, for me, Waheguru means to live in a perpetual state of awe. That's the practice. And the sound current of Waheguru is exactly what it means. And so it's like not getting caught up in the busyness of your mind or the busyness of the world around you, but to like pause and just be in awe of the wonder of like the water on your hands while you're washing the dishes, or being in awe of the bird in the sky or the color of the sunset, and start to look at your own body even like a sunset. That's this perpetual state of awe, and the sound current Waheguru is returning you to that. Like, live in awe, live in wonder, live in awe. You're transforming constantly from life and birth and life and death and rebirth. And what a simple reminder, you know, Waheguru, 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 and living in that sound current. That's what I try and do.
Yeah, Waheguru and Satanama, I feel like, are the two that really just like the cycle of infinity, life, death, and rebirth. Like being able to, those are the two mantras that I feel like are my go-tos. Because, you know, we want to be able to be in that state of ecstasy in all areas of our lives. And I think people are finally waking up to the fact that like it doesn't have to be hard anymore, this thing called life, you know, like we have the decision to choose that life can come with ease and grace. And you can get to that point once you've cleared through the blocks. And that's like the greatest thing that Kundalini Yoga has done for me. Like, I've been a teacher for 5 years now. And when I was like, I didn't even know about, like, I found out about Kundalini Yoga through a Pinterest test like 7 years ago. It was like, which yoga is right for you? And I was like, well, chanting, because I like to sing. And
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, Kundalini Yoga. And then I was going to do a yoga therapy 1,000-hour teacher training in Encinitas. And then the studio was offering for the first time Kundalini Yoga teacher training. I was like, oh my God, that was the training that I saw on Pinterest. And so I signed up without ever taking a course. Like my soul just knew that this was going to be the technology that was going to really allow me to catapult out of my shit and align to my highest self. So I'm really interested to hear with you about how you're seeing people's lives transform at the Dharma Temple, from when they first walk in to, being committed to the practice and understanding that this is a technology that is really shifting our energetic field. Like, what have you seen as the transformation of your client, of your students, and the people that have come through your sacred temple?
Well, just to sort of finish the thought about Guru Singh and how the Dharma Temple started, I think will lead us really sweetly into how people have responded to it. Because, when I had that first meeting with Guru Singh and I told him what was happening with our previous center and asked him for advice, because he said he'd take me on for this mentoring. And we had
Awesome.
a call, much like we were doing. And I've been mentoring with Guru Singh for the past 4 years. So this is about 4 years ago. And he said to me, you know what? The amount of energy and money and time that you need to give these people, he said, is Gyan Mudra. And he held his hand up in Gyan Mudra. And I was like, okay. And he's like, it means zero. And he said, and it also means it's going to be okay. And so he said, just take your stuff and go. And I was like, yeah, but you don't understand. Like, if I just take my stuff and go, like, there's going to be a lawsuit and it's going to be this like whole thing and, doubt and yeah, but like, Yogi Bhajan told Guru Singh one time, he said, the worst word in the English language is yeah, but.
Yeah, but,
Yeah, and that was my yeah, but moment. And I was like, I don't know. And he's like, just go. And so I did go, and we went through a whole lawsuit. And like my business coach would say, she says, hey, you've been to court. You're officially an entrepreneur. So we didn't actually go to court, but I thought that was a funny joke. But we left, and we had to figure out a place to go, and everything worked out in the lawsuit. It was stressful, but we ended up opening a new place, which is like 2 blocks from our house, called Dharma Temple, and it's been there for 3 years, and it's thriving. And it was a little bit strange for people at first, because I went through this massive transformation in a short period of time as a result of what I was doing with Guru Singh. And it was powerful because I quit drinking. I left behind this like toxic business relationship. And so I was like, I'm all in. And actually the way I quit drinking was I did the Aquarian sadhana without missing a day at 4 a.m. for 9 months straight.
Oh my gosh. Devotion.
That's some yogic rehab right there.
Yeah.
But I was like, if I can't do it this way, then I got to go to a program or something, like I need to change. And so by the grace of the Guru, it worked. And so for people in the community, at first it was like, whoa, the beard and the long hair and the turbans and the what are we doing now? And but fast forward to 3 years later, the transformation that I've seen in people is, I used to be able to serve people a lot, to bring a lot of health into the body and teach them how to breathe, which is so beneficial. But with the Kundalini practice, it's taken things to a whole new level where, there are people who are like reconnect. We have a lot of Punjabi people in Vancouver and a large Sikh community. And so that means not necessarily that they're like Sikhs coming to the Dharma Temple and practicing, but people who grew up around the mantras and around the tradition who are maybe a bit afraid of it, like, or if that's my parents' thing or whatever it is. And then they have these like profound experiences in the temple where they're reconnecting to their roots. And like even people who are like going to the Golden Temple in Amritsar and going to see their grandmother and chanting these mantras, and they don't have to become a Sikh, but they're connecting it to their tradition in a new way. And then the other side of it is people who maybe want to learn about yoga, but all there is around town is like stretch $200 stretchy pants and standing on your head and that sort of thing. And they come into a place like Dharma Temple, which is very focused on art and creativity and community. And it's not just like a punch in, punch out, do your exercise. It's a spiritual place. We see it as a healing center and a spiritual center more than a place for exercise. But we do exercise because that's part of spirituality.
Your
And
arms will be exercised with Kundalini Yoga.
yeah, for sure. And there's so many ways to practice, and it's remarkable to see what's happening. And some people aren't ready for it too. Like some people come in,
Definitely.
whoa, what is this? And that's okay. We just gotta keep up because we know we're living our destiny, and we're doing, and we see the benefit. We see the healing, and the people who aren't ready for it yet, God bless them. We'll be there when they're ready, or if they're ready, or if they need to do something else. That's cool too.
Yeah, what was really interesting, what you were talking about earlier, because this is the same thing that happened with my teachers. They were husband and wife in Encinitas, and she found Kundalini Yoga first. And then he was like, no, I'm not going to do that. And then he was seeing the results that she was having. And now they own a studio together. And so I think that's part of the Aquarian age is more of that femininity, which is also why that's what I'm seeing with these new spaces, is that opportunity for creativity, is that opportunity of expression, because that is the new paradigm of yoga. That is the new paradigm of living. And all yoga is union. So it's the union with ourselves. So when we can see that with that inner union within ourselves, of the balance of the masculine and feminine, then we can see that without, and we can see that as part of our human experience, because the inner is always creating the outer. So it's like I said, it's just really fascinating to see how Kundalini is on the rise, and more people are talking about it, and it's not going anywhere. Like these teachings, they're timeless. They really are, because you're working so much with the brain and the subconscious, and on a cellular level, you're healing. And what's just been coming up for me lately too is like, I feel like these next years are years that are going to be very strong DNA clearing and healing. And then once that happens, because the lower triangle, the lower three chakras, like those will be like mission complete once you clear through the blocks, and then we can live in that heart-centered 5D consciousness. Yes. So it's really interesting to see how the times that we're in now, it's like people are being triggered like shit. Like they're being so triggered because we're only scratching the surface of this new millennia. We're only scratching the surface of this new paradigm. And so we have been required over the past couple years to really clean up our mess. And there's no more time to play small, because there's so much out there for us to experience. And it's just us getting like out of our own way, and us clearing through the blocks and the things that have kept us comfortable or safe, because they're what we've known, even if it doesn't feel in alignment in that space.
Yes. And I love how you use the 5D language, because I'm so into that. I think that there are basically three ways that we interact with society and with ourselves. And those three ways are cultural or social, and then there's genealogical, and then there's like the cosmic or universal. And the challenges in our society, like the anxiety that we're dealing with and the need to be right and the time of rage, comes from people identifying with the old paradigm that you are your cultural background, or you're defined by your even your DNA. Like you said, we're going to change the DNA. The genealogical, I mean, the old Darwinian way of thinking is you are, if your father had a heart problem, you're going to have a heart problem. And you could even look at like sickness, like skin disease sickness, like racism. Like if your father was racist, you're going to be racist, or whatever it
You're
might
the sacred disruptor that gets to decide that no more.
Exactly. And now we understand that's not true, that actually what defines your DNA or your genealogy more than your bloodline is your environment. They've done these tests where they take three identical cells and place them in different environments, and one cell creates bone, the other cell creates muscle tissue, and the other cell creates fat. Identical cells placed in three different environments, and that's what you're composed of. So you're actually more defined by your environment, which you have the ability to create, because you are creator and creation as one. And the way that you do that is you get in touch with the cosmological self, or the universal, the cosmic self. And that is done through, the entrance point is through the parasympathetic nervous system, the part of you that meditates, the part of you that opens to receive, the part of you that's the divine feminine that's in everybody, whether you're male or female. And that's what we need most during this time, because if we identify primarily with the cultural or primarily with the genealogical, we get into trouble. We get into that old school masculine way of thinking. It's got to be logic. It's got to be right. I have to win all of the time. So it's like, how do we connect to that portal, which is the parasympathetic nervous system? Well, it's through prayer. It's through yoga nidra. It's through service. It's through deep listening. And these are the practices of the time, and recognizing who you really are in relationship to the whole. And I think Kundalini Yoga is designed for that as a lifestyle practice, to create patterns in your life, connect you to that universal self. And then you can expand it through the universal self out into the cultural, out into the genealogical. That's how you can change your DNA, and that's how you can change the world.
Yep. Aho. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I know for me, that's been so much of my journey, has been really healing my nervous system and my parasympathetic nervous system. Especially after being struck by lightning, because that's what got, attacked, because your aura extends out 2 to 3 feet normally, but then when you do Kundalini Yoga, and it can extend out to way more, like 9 feet. At the time I wasn't doing Kundalini Yoga, but it was enough for my aura to have the holes in it, that
right.
The and the velocity that came from that incident went through those holes, and it shot my nervous system, because the fight or flight response, all of that was like tumultuous for years. Like I literally had to hide for 4 years because the environment outside of me was too intense, because the environment inside of me was shot. So right. It's a huge part. And that's something that my mentor has always said too, is like, your environment is stronger than will. Like if you're not creating that environment to support your will, you're not going to succeed, plain and simple. And so that's why it's so important to be aware of the people we surround ourselves with, playing the mantras to really elevate the space, because that's also higher dimension
for
sound.
Sure.
And to work with these tools to best support you, because again, there's no more time. Like each of us came here on this divine mission, and each of us came here to live out why we're here. And for us to do that, we can't be doing the same shit we've been doing, So I just think there's just such a sense of awe and wonder also that's happening. Like, of course, there's a lot of people that are still afraid to get out of their comfort zone, but there's also this like yearning of like, okay, I see this, and then the blocks are still kind of happening. So yeah, I definitely feel like the idea and the knowing of the teachings of the nervous system is not something that's really taught about up and like very recently. I think that's one of the biggest things of Kundalini Yoga that we really focus on, is the power and the importance of the nervous system. Especially as we continue to do this work, we're becoming increasingly more sensitive. So we have to make sure that we are doing the practices and the habits and the routines and the ceremonies and the rituals to keep our energy elevated to higher levels, so that we can continue to contain the energy that we are creating, whether it's through Kundalini Yoga, whether it's through being of service, whether it's through sharing our medicine. We have to be able to sustain and consolidate our energy. So I think that's also been a huge aha that a lot of people are really having right now too.
Yes. And this Aquarian age, this time, is a time of great awareness. And because it's a polarity planet, that awareness can lift and elevate, or that awareness can destroy you. And that's where what you see with like people's inability to relax. That's a big one, right? It's like if you're constantly connecting through the sympathetic nervous system, you're go, 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 the hustle is real and all of that kind of mentality, what happens in the body is that if you're all sympathetic, and you don't create space for relaxation, like you treat recreation as relaxation, like it's Friday night after a tough week, so I'm going to sit on this bar stool and drink a bunch of beer, or, I've had a tough day, and so I'm going to relax when I get home. And I do that by like sitting on my phone for 2 hours, Well, you may be horizontal. You may be horizontal while you're doing that, but your brain is in an active state, which means sympathetic nervous system is working. So you're not actually relaxing. And then what happens is that the parasympathetic nervous system, because it's not giving an opportunity to come in and do its job, then you create a synthetic version of that. And that's the need to relax. And it feels like relaxation, but it's recreation. And it creates an imbalance. And then nature's trying to bring harmony to your own individual experience. And that's why you experience anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
Something telling you that things are out of alignment, things aren't working correctly. Please relax. Like, your system is asking you to do that. And so the awareness is like, we have all this information. We've heard Yogi Bhajan say, like, during this time, you'll be able to access all the teachings with a click of a button. But the challenge is it will push all your buttons, he said. And that's the thing about awareness. Awareness is, I can access all this information. Isn't it incredible, that I can look up any of the teachings, any of the kriyas, any of the wisdom that will serve me with a click of a button? That's incredible. But also, I'm in a constant state of distraction. I'm in a constant state of need for improvement. I'm in a constant state of comparison. And that's the downside of the awareness, and they go together. So we can choose how we use our awareness, and that's the way you do it, is through those practices that you described, through your ritual and routine, through your devotional practice, through your strengthening the nervous system, through what you're eating every day, what you're practicing every day. And then you can bring harmony to the system,
Yeah, because I think, and that's also what I feel is happening too, is the shift, the paradigm shift around business. Like, the hustle doesn't really work anymore, because if you're in alignment, it will flow effortlessly. And so I think, being able to, like, success really comes from being able to be successful within your own energy. So you have to be able to honor that space, like, take time out, like, understanding if you have that focused intention, like, you're going to get a lot more done. So that's where the structure, the masculine energy, like creating the structures and the systems to allow the Shakti to flow, the feminine, the creativity, because it has that safe container. So it's been really interesting to also see the shift of business and this conversation that's happening around business right now, how it's not all about hustle, 14-hour work days, unless you're in that 14-hour workday and it's flowing. Like, if you're in that state, like, fucking follow it, but if you're trying to make it work rather than, like, allowing it to flow, and you're, like, finding all this resistance and all of these, like, these blocks or things aren't, like, that's just showing you, like, hello, out of alignment. But it takes time through experience to understand that too, because we can be telling you these things. You're not going to learn just through the words. You're going to learn best through experience. And that's what I love about Kundalini Yoga. It's like, it's an experience. Everyone's experience is different. That's why after you do a kriya, you do a meditation, you take that deep inhale, lock mula bond, and then you don't move right after, because that's part of, like, the integration and the embodiment of the work you've just done.
No doubt. It's powerful stuff. And, it's interesting you're talking about, like, that 14-hour day and being in the flow. Like, the way that asanas and kriyas, the way that they're effective is that basically you're putting the body in a state that's challenged, and you're learning to relax your brain. So if you can be, like, in that 14-hour day and you're up against the challenge, but you're doing it for the cause, and you can actually bring your brain into a relaxed state, it's kind of like the body's moving and the brain is sitting down. Like, the feeling when you get home after a long day and you take your shoes off and you're just like, oh my God, it feels so amazing. So, like, the way that the asanas and the kriyas are meant to work effectively is that even though the body is in a challenged state, like you said, putting your arms up in the air, if you can relax your brain while you're doing that, that's the state of neutrality. That's the,
and you focus on the mantra that's being played.
Yeah.
That's what's also working through it.
Exactly. Whatever, like, it is that the breath and the mantra are the best things. Yes. And so you can relax your brain into this state of relaxation, even though the body's challenged. And that's the neutrality. All energy is neutral and timeless. All energy is neutral and timeless. And we're mirroring that in the practice.
Yes. And it's just like, that's also the balance, you know, of the masculine and feminine too. So I would love to chat about that, because I feel like it's such a pivotal part of even of Kundalini too, you know, like we need to make sure that we can even address like the things that are out of balance, you know, work with the Kriya to help. And a Kriya is a practice, if you guys aren't aware. The Kriya is like a practice. It's kind of like a formula, or like directions. Like you would build a cake, like you add onto each thing, like 10 minutes of this, or 3 minutes of this. It's usually like 3, 6, 9, 11, 21, 31. Like it's all like numbers of 3 or like 11. It's pretty
Right.
much what I've discovered with Kundalini Yoga. But yeah, so I would love to share with you, like you to share some of the practices that you can see that can help people really balance the masculine and feminine within them, so that they can reach that state of neutrality.
Yeah. I think that one of the things that when I work with, I'm pretty passionate about working one-on-one with students. I mean, I teach a couple of classes a week to large groups, but working one-on-one with people is great because you can really see where they're at. And a lot of people, male and female, get caught up in that masculine mentality of like, I have to do more to feel validated, even in their spiritual practice, like getting hard on themselves because they didn't do the meditation every day. They didn't get up at the time. They didn't, whatever it is, you know, they didn't do the hard Kriya. So they didn't feel like they were worthy because they didn't exercise in that way. And I found that one of the most effective things to give to people is on top of the Kriyas, you know, and we could get more specific about that. But one of the things is to create some structure in your day, use that masculine energy of creating structure in your day to have time where you're just open to receive. And that means like structure time in your day where you're just like, okay, between 2 and 4 today, or 2 and 3, or whatever you're going to do, I'm just going to be in my home and I'm going to be open to whatever spirit has for me to do. I could paint a picture, I could go for a walk, I could sing, I could chant a mantra, I could take a bath, I could, you know, creating space for that. Because if we don't create space for that, we kind of, that's like devaluing the feminine. That's the open to receive part. And that's essential for your health and wellness. And it doesn't have to be so linear and structured. I mean, we even see some of that in Kundalini Yoga, like this is the time that you must do the sadhana, and this is and there's value to that. Obviously, I got sober doing that, but I also understand that, like, you know, the story's not over. It's not like, okay, Yogi Bhajan gave this, and this is the story of Kundalini Yoga, and now we just carry on doing it. Creation is still moving, and it's moving through you, and it's the universal mind, or the guru is revealing itself to you, and you need to be able to create time for that space. Otherwise, it won't happen.
Yep. And I think that's what people need to understand, is that you are the one who's like, gets to direct your energy. Like you have a responsibility and an opportunity to direct your energy and the container that you are setting through those energetic boundaries, and that sacredness of like, that's how we honor time. That's how we're honoring time. Time is our greatest gift that we have, because it's fleeting. Like it's not always here. So I know through my own experience, I've had to learn a lot about valuing time, because, you know, going through the healing journey, it was just like, I couldn't even focus on that. But I saw how much of a hindrance that was for me to not really structure my time, or to honor my time, and to not even just like have it like, I'll get there eventually. It's like, no, I'm deciding right here, right now, that this is the time that it's coming through. And that's when you can co-create your reality, in that sense of creating that time, creating that structure, and creating that flow.
Mm-hmm.
It's the medicine. That's the medicine. And I think like there's going to be a deeper awareness, and we can get so caught up in this black vortex that is a phone, you know, and I know for me, I've also been in like crazy time vortexes. Like tomorrow I'm leaving to go to Tucson, Arizona to go to the gem fair. And my sister, your sister, Krista Ryerson of Chalice Grove, I'm meeting her there. And we went last year, and we're like in this huge like convention essentially of crystals. And it's a time warp. Like there's so much energy in there that it's just a time warp. And I think we had to understand that practices like Kundalini Yoga help us navigate time and space through that with ease and grace, because it's there to support us. It's not there to hinder us. And it's been interesting with time too, because we're recording this is the last day of January, and it feels like this month has been so long. Like sometimes time like flies, but this January feels like it's been so fucking long between the eclipses and like the intensity of that, because there was so much shadow that came up with this last eclipse portal, because it was in Leo. So that's the polarity of Aquarius. And so I think for us, we had to really go through that period of embracing a blood moon, super moon, wolf moon eclipse in Leo to really help us clear out our own ego, our own blocks, to really step precedent with to set precedent for the Aquarian age.
Yes, no doubt. I can relate. So January, I got a lot of things done, new projects, shooting these online courses that we're doing. I have my own translation of Japji, which is the traditional prayer we do in the morning, which is written in Aquarian language, because that prayer has been such an anchor in my life. So I have a recording of that and a book that's connected to that coming up. So I've been in like go mode. And then
Capricorn.
like two or maybe 2.5 weeks into January, my wife and I both got like super sick. And we never get sick like that. We were both like laid flat for like a week. And in some ways, we got to spend a lot of time in our home and just like cleansing things in our home and just putting a stop to the work. And I've been able to get back to the work with a real sense of clarity that I feel like that was a blessing, even though like at the time I was like, oh my God, I'm going to die. Like, I'm just
that's part of what happens.
Prepare for that death right now,
Yeah, when I feel like when you get sick, it's because that old part of you is dying out, and so that's like anytime I see myself getting sick, I'm like, okay, I'm up leveling, because the energy that my body has been holding on to, it's not sustainable for me to go into the next evolution. And I know, talking about projects, I know there's a project that you're working on right now that I think is so dope, because I know for me, I've been hearing the call too, and I feel like a lot of strong leaders, like new paradigm, golden era leaders, are really being called to go on these pilgrimages to the sacred sites, because we need to go to these vortexes to get activated so that we can go forth and share our message and our truth. I mean, I feel like that's why I was called to Joshua Tree. Like I, of course, had to clear, I grew up in the desert, so I had to clear a lot of like, again, my lower triangle, my lower 3 chakras, so I can be in that heart-centered space. But there's also a wild vortex out here in Joshua Tree. And, now like I'm hearing like the rise of like women being called to go to Egypt. Like the priestesses are being called right now to go back to Egypt, or like there's massive pilgrimages going to Paris to go walk the path of Mary Magdalene and see what her life was like after Jesus resurrected. And just a lot of people who've been doing this deep work are really being called to go to these sacred sites. And I know you were sharing with me that you're working on a new series of going to these sacred sites and sharing the pilgrimages, so that we can really start understanding these ancient wisdoms and integrate it more into this new paradigm. Because if it was working, something was working back then, damn straight, like they're onto something, and like we need to start implementing a lot more of what we are here. So I would love to hear from you that journey and the download that you received, that this is the next step of my soul's work and my soul's evolution to share and uplift humanity.
Well, the seed was planted when I was at summer solstice in New Mexico in June this last year, and I was there with 2 of my dearest friends, and we were doing the white tantric. And during one of the white tantric days, and for your listeners who don't know what white tantric is, at solstice, it's 3 days of 1 hour long meditations, and it is
so intense
on top of a mountain in 40 degrees. It's like, I was unpacking what happened at solstice for at least 6 months, like after that happened.
It's no joke, guys. I've only done one white tantra, and it was 1 day. and it was like 6 hours, and like having to like point and hold the third eye of my partner. Like, it's like, that was like the day, like the week after I graduated from teacher training. I was like, oh my God, I fucking hate this so much. So yeah, so
Yeah.
you were at White Tantra in
My friend who I was doing tantric with, he said, "This is the worst and best day of my life." So anyways, so I have a friend here who we do a lot of music projects together where like I'll do the teaching and he plays like bowls and gongs and all of these things. So we thought, let's do tantric together. Lots of times it's a male and a female, but we're so beyond all of that. It's like we're birthing a project together. We live in male bodies. We're going to do tantric together. And it's funny because like some people look at tantric like it's like a dating thing. Like, oh, who are you doing tantric with? And
it's like
I'm
high
so
school.
not into that, So yeah, exactly. So we're like, and they're like, oh, two men doing tantric together. Wow. It's like, come on, guys, get with the times. So we were doing tantric together. And then during one of the meditations, we're looking into each other's eyes. And then I kid you not, like he dissolves, all 2,000 people around us dissolve. So Yogi Bhajan, everyone dissolves and Yogi Bhajan appears, the real, as a person, not like a dream. It's the real thing happening here. And we're face to face. And he says to me that you're not meant to be a Sikh in this life in the way you might think. And he said, you're paying too much attention to thinking. You need to pay attention to consciousness, and I'll help guide you. And then he disappears. My partner and I are back face to face. All 2,000 people are there. My partner's like, dude, where did you just go? And I was like, I'll tell you all about it after this exercise. It was wild.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's what happens. Then we come down off the mountain, and it like threw me for such a loop. Like I was like, was that real? Am I going crazy? Like I don't know what to do, what to think. And then fast forward a little bit from there, and we go to this men's camp with Guru Singh every summer, which is like a conscious men's gathering for people who are in the doing the practice. So there's like people from 30 years old, 25 years old, up to 75 years old, all men or people who identify as male who come together at this camp. And every year we decide we're going to do a project, and as an individual. And this year, two of my friends who were there with me at the solstice and another one of my best friends were there, and we decided we need to do like a spiritual travel show that's not like dry and academic and just like, here's the history of Buddhism and it came from here in this year. I mean, I've done a ton of that in my academic life, but it's a little dry. And then there's the other side of it where it's like, oh, travel, and here's all the fun things, and you can eat and drink and party, and or even like getting interested in more the political side, but it's not talking about the essence of like what the people practice, the spirituality, the heart of what they do. So we thought, well, let's do something. Let's create something like that, and we'll shoot the first episode. We'll go to Amritsar, where the Golden Temple, the Hari Mandir Sahib, which is directly connected to this lineage of Kundalini Yoga, and we'll go there and say our prayers and bathe in the nectar tank that has had the sound current chanted over it for hundreds of years. And then from there, we'll go to this place called Goindaval, and it's a pilgrimage site that's supposed to clear your karma for an entire lifetime.
Wow.
And it's the prayer of Guru Nanak, which is Japji, that I've been doing every morning since I started with Guru Singh for 4 years. It's like, that's my lifeline. Like I have non-negotiables. And so like a non-negotiable for me is not like getting up at 4 a.m., but a non-negotiable is I do my Japji prayer every morning. A non-negotiable for me is like, I serve my community. That's a value for me. But instead of like, you go to practice at this time and you have to wrap your head and, just make your non-negotiables simple. So Japji, no matter how awful I wake up feeling in the morning, when I do Japji, my problems dissolve and I'm fully present, neutral, ready for the day. So I've created this relationship with this prayer. And I say all of that because the pilgrimage site is you go down into this well and you dip into the nectar tank and you wash yourself with the water. And then you step on the first step. of these staircase, and there's 84 steps total. And you recite Japji, and then you go back in the tank, and then you go on the second step and you recite Japji, and then you go back in the tank, and then you go in the third, and
Wow.
this goes on for 84 stairs. It takes between 17 and 24 hours. I haven't done it yet, so I'll let you know how it goes on the other end. But a recitation of Japji if you're fast takes about 11 minutes. So
Right.
11 times 84, not to mention bathing in the tank, you're looking at starting at 7 p.m., going through the night, finishing at noon the next day or something like that.
Wild. But that's the thing too, is that when you activate yourself and your Kundalini, that's your life force. So you can be able to sustain yourself through that.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think you need to push yourself sometimes through those things. That's been my experience, like that 3 days of tantric, all of a sudden I'm there talking to a person in real life who's been dead since the 1990s, so.
But that's part of I think people forget that, like when the going gets tough, it's like, this is like, you have to go through it. It's kind of like an initiation, like that shadow that can come up during those moments. Like that's the initiation, because it's the invitation for you to be the light. And it's the invitation for you to transmute that shadow into light through your essence and through your devotion and through your being.
Totally. I know Rumi, I'll paraphrase here, but I know Rumi, he has this one beautiful writing where he talks about how he said a lot of people want to go through the cooling effects of the water to feel the fire of devotion, but it doesn't work that way. You go through the fire, you go through the challenge, you go through the dark night of the soul, you learn to hold steady or be completely broken apart. And in doing that, you'll feel the cooling effects of the water.
Those are the first steps. Like that's really the first steps of your soul's evolution, is the shadow work, is healing the core wounds, is doing the inner child healing. Because from there you can break through. And I think a lot of people, they don't understand that. They're just in that victim mentality of like, why is this happening to me? And it's like, no, it's happening for you.
Yes, exactly.
These are the steps to actualize what it is you desire.
Yes, exactly. It's a blessing, I have a friend who grew up around like the magic tradition, and he said in the magic tradition, pressure is God. And I love that. I never heard that before, because we think like about God, like, early in your spiritual practice, you're like, oh, God, please take the pressure away. But it's like asking God to take God away.
I love that.
Yeah.
Because it's like God wants the best for you.
Yeah.
And the best of you. And through the experiences, you make the best better. Because you are already like, you're at your best. We're always like, where we're at is like what we've known. And through these practices, we make the best of ourselves, of our gifts better. Through that, because we are all extensions of God. We are all made in the likeness of God. So we are all God. And those pressures make us even better.
Yeah. And I think, you could look back at your life, I know I can, and go like, all the like major challenges are huge blessings.
The greatest gifts. Like we were like, oh, well, what has been your favorite like failure or the biggest struggle, And it's like, it was just a struggle in that blink of an eye. But when you look back at it, it was the greatest thing that happened to me, because it gave me wisdom. It gave me courage. It shows what you're capable of accomplishing. And it shows like your willpower, that like when there's a will, there's a way, and you go through it, and then you can help a brother or a sister down the line go through it. Or you can also lighten the load for humanity. And that's what it's all about. It's like you are that extension of divine love. And when you commit to doing the work for yourself, not only are you healing your ancestral lineage, you're healing your DNA, you're transmuting all of that, but you're affecting your community and the world at large, because you're lightening the load, and we're all in this one mind. We're all in the golden web together. So that's why it's important for each of us to take responsibility for the things that are being presented to us, so that we can really allow ourselves to step up and show up and really make great change, because it starts with us. The inner creates the outer.
You know it. I heard the great American spiritual teacher Bruce Springsteen say, that you can either be a ghost or an ancestor. And if you choose to be a ghost, you're going to haunt your lineage down the line. And if you choose to be an ancestor, there you'll be there as a great support. And I think what a profound way of putting it.
Yeah, that's your legacy too, you know,
Yeah.
and it's like we can become better ancestors right here, right now, so
Yeah.
that the future generations don't have to go through the shit that we've had to
Exactly.
endure, that our family had to endure. Like that's old paradigm that we had to keep, like we said earlier, that we had to keep in that flow and in that loop.
Exactly. So don't be a ghost, be an ancestor.
Amazing. So I
And
have one.
Yogi,
Go ahead.
yeah, go ahead.
No, you go first.
I was going to say Yogi Bhajan, he talked about that too, right? About not chasing your ghosts around.
Mm-hmm. And there's so many kriyas to get rid of your ghost too,
Yeah.
like transmute your ghost.
Yeah.
I know it's like, I think it's in the rebirthing kriya book. It's talking about like the ghost. It's like my favorite kriya book because I like to go deep clearly. So like, I'm like, fucking bring it on. Like
Yeah.
I
I
can't
can
do
relate.
surface level shit.
Yeah. If I'm not communing with the golden chain from the other side in HD, then I'm not doing it right.
Yeah, definitely. Amazing. So yeah, so I'm really excited to see like, you know, what comes out of this pilgrimage that you're hearing the call to answer to. And I mean, I'm just so grateful for like people like you who are really embodying the divine masculine, and especially in a world right now where there's like the conversation of toxic masculinity has to come up because that's been the patriarchal system and everything. But it's like really refreshing to be able to communicate with men who are like understand like there's like a lot, it's a deeper, like, yes, women like are going through a lot too, because we're like reintroducing the Sophia back into earth, which is like the feminine essence of God. But
My wife's reading a Sophia code right now.
Sophia code, yeah, man, like next level for sure. I mean, because the earth is Sophia, like
Mm-hmm.
the divine mother is the earth. So we have to like really start working with the elements and with her to really
Mm-hmm.
implement the great change, because that's why each of us came here. So yeah, what is your vision that you're seeing with like the rise of conscious men and conscious men groups, and you know, being able to set precedent for what it really means to be like a strong man in today's world?
Yeah, that's a great topic. I'm happy to talk about it. I think for me, the big healing components, I can touch on a few things that have been big for me. One is having a mentor. I had a lot of teachers. I've sat at the feet of many masters in my 20 years of practice. And one of the things that really made me connect deeply to Guru Singh is that he's such a great example as a husband. He's such a great example as a father. He's such a great example as a grandfather. And he lives with a vitality, with devotion, and he lives with a rebellious spirit. And to have somebody in your life who's a man who's living like that and has lived like that their entire life, that is so valuable and so needed during this time, because it's like, who do you look to, right? It's like, who are your examples? So that for me is a huge one. The other part of that is going to Kundalini Yoga as a lifestyle practice is so beautiful, because there are many men who have been living like that in this tradition. And I can only speak to this tradition, but I have explored all kinds of traditions, and this is something that I haven't come across, where it's like I've learned so much about my relationship. I've learned so much about parenting. I've learned so much about my relationship to addiction. I've learned so much about how to hold steady as a man, and also embrace my feminine side and my creativity. And the part of me that meditates is the feminine side as well, as we touched on earlier in the talk. And then, it's really important that men create solid relationships, because what happens with men is, if they partner up, whether it's with another man or with a woman, what happens is that person becomes their primary friend or relationship, and they become isolated from the world around them as they age, and that creates a lot of issue, because then we're not talking about our issues. We're not talking about the problems that we're faced with. We're just kind of like isolating ourselves, and then living in a world that has been dominated by this masculine quality of like the need to be right, the need to be in control. And the feminine side of that is like, we need to come together and be open and honest about what's going on with us. There's great healing in that, and everybody needs to do it. And those are sort of the things that I've done. And then I guess I think it's like having some kind of devotional, basically two things. You need something to clear your stuff energetically. So some kind of practice, whether it's Tai Chi or, running or hiking or Kundalini Yoga.
Movement of energy.
Yeah, exactly. Some way to move the energy, and then some kind of devotional practice. And when I say devotional practice, it means like on a daily basis, you're going into a state of love that could bring you to tears. And that could be like some craft that you do. It could be, it's like,
we all have our own things.
Exactly. And it has to be like a deep, deep, deep sense of love. And you need to connect to it on a daily basis. And
because I've been seeing, like, I've been shifting the mindset instead of discipline, because it has such a heavy connotation, like see it as devotion, which is a lot more nurturing, because the discipline can be really triggering, because a lot of people have trauma from being disciplined, you know, as a kid, for trying to express themselves and people not really understanding who they are, because they're just not on that frequency or that level of being able to understand the kid in front of them. So to be able to see it as a devotion to your highest self, to God, to source, to your intention, it's a lot more nurturing, which is more of that divine feminine essence.
For sure. There's no question. So it's like connect to love every day on a daily basis. And that's why for me, like Japji, the recitation of that prayer puts me into this deep state of love. And it's not about a belief system. It's a code. It's a mantric code that works. And the incredible thing about it is it's been chanted by millions of people for the purpose of elevation, for the purpose of, when the Sikh movement was born, it was a social movement saying, like, in the old days, if you weren't born of a certain caste, you couldn't even hear the Vedas being chanted. If you were low caste, if a high caste person's shadow touched your food, they would throw it in the garbage. Like, it was really intense. And they're still feeling that in India. And this prayer that I say every morning was the beginning of a social movement saying men and women are to be treated equal. All castes should have access to spiritual teachings, and that there's one universal creator and we all have access to it. That's the essence of the prayer. Right? It begins with Ekankar Satanam. There's one universal creative force. Truth is its name. And Nam, we think Nam is name identity. It's actually like the frequency or vibration that is in all of life. Nam is in the birds, it's in the soil, it's in the water, it's in the raindrops, it's in your skin, it's in everything. That's Nam. And so when you tune into this prayer that has been recited by millions of people for this very purpose of experiencing oneness, you plug into that and you become that. And when you become that frequency, there's not a lot of room for anxiety. There's not a lot of room for depression. There's not a lot of room for that feeling of discipline, like you're being pushed down. It's a deep state of love, and a deep state of love for all.
Waheguru to that.
Yeah. Waheguru to that. So you need to find something, and it could be anything. You could feel the devotion of painting. You could be devoted to your children.
What elevates your soul? It's like, what elevates your spirit? And that's what's so beautiful, is that we're not robots. Like, all of us have our own various things. Like, some people it's dancing, some people it's crafting, some people it's sewing, some people it's gardening. Like, and it doesn't matter. It's about that devotion to your highest self, which is your elevated sense of who you are. Because that is who you are at the core. And then the world of the 3D world, the reality that we live in, that is what gives us the density of steering us off course if we allow it.
Yeah, exactly. I thought I'd share this quick little story about Ram Dass that relates to what we're saying. If you haven't heard it before, it's one of my favorites. When Ram Dass he's giving this talk about his experience with LSD back in the 1960s and 70s, and how that opened him up to yoga and consciousness. And he's telling this story about his experience with psychedelics. And while he's telling the story, there's a little old lady in the front row of the where he's giving the talk. And he said she looked like the lady from Tweety Bird, like the tight gray bun and the round glasses and like the frilly sort of dress. And
I love that.
he's just like nodding along with him, just like totally like right with him on the LSD trip and consciousness and being present. And then so he gets to the end and he's signing books and talking to people as you do when you're Ram Dass at the end of your talk. And the little old lady comes up and he goes, I got to ask you, like, there's no way you were taking mushrooms and LSD or anything like that. Like, but you were right there with me. Like, what's the story with that? And she said, I totally relate to what you're saying because I crochet. And I'm like, that's it right there.
Oh my God, I love that. Oh my God, that's so great. Yeah, I mean, Ram Dass, like, I know for me, like, LSD helped me find yoga, like, plain and simple, you know, because it had me face all of my own shit that I like had to, all my shit came up from LSD that I was like, okay, like now it's time to work through it. So here comes Kundalini Yoga. Here comes meditation. Here comes all the teachings. Here comes learning about indigos and everything. Like my whole spiritual path, like really kicked off like from that experience. So, I mean, Ram Dass is like one of my favorite. And I think a lot of people, like he'll go down in history like with a beautiful legacy of like understanding what life really is about. And for other people to recognize that through crochet, like that's incredible.
Yes. So it can have, devotion, that experience of devotion, not necessarily being devoted to something, but experiencing devotion. That can be experienced through many, many, many forms.
There's no limits. There's no limit.
Yeah, 7.7 billion at this point, but that will increase.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. Oh, I've really enjoyed this conversation. I have a few lightning round questions that I love to ask at the end.
Okay, cool.
What would you say is your spirit animal totem right now?
Oh, I go with the lion every time.
God, so good. The interview I had yesterday, she said the lioness too.
Yeah.
Well, I am a car, so Shivander car, right?
Yes.
What would you say was the most like profound book that you read that really changed the trajectory of your life?
Well, I would have to say, let me put two in if I'm allowed to.
Yeah, you can say two.
Okay, so the first book that really changed my life was when I was 16 years old. I saw this orange covered book which had a picture of a man with long dreadlocks all the way down to the floor and a massive beard. And it said, "It's Here Now Are You" by Bhagavan Das. And so I bought the book. I read the book. It completely changed my life forever. That was over 20 years ago. And so I wouldn't be who I am today if it wasn't for that book. And then the second part of that book is, that prayer Japji comes from the Guru Granth Sahib, which is the sacred book of the Sikhs. And if it wasn't for that book, we wouldn't be here talking about Yogi Bhajan. We wouldn't be here talking about Guru Singh. We wouldn't be here, talking about the way things shifted and changed in India. Because, in those days, before the Sikhs made this social movement, if you were a woman and if you weren't a Brahmin, you couldn't practice yoga. It was against the law. And so I just would like to honor that book because it's a powerful teaching. And like I said, the story's not over. The time of 10 gurus, that was first there was like one Buddha and one Christ and then 10 gurus. And now there's going to be 25 million messiahs, men, women, however you identify, people who are going to go, okay, enough of this. I'm going to stand up for oneness. I'm going to do it from a place of deep love. And so I like to thank, all the great masters who have provided this opportunity for us to be the 25 million that create the tipping point so that the 7.7 billion come along with us and we change the trajectory of this whole thing.
Because it trickles down.
At 25 mil out of 7.7 bill, that's not that bad.
No, not at all. Not at all. Okay, so what would you say to your younger self today?
I would say to my younger self, that's a good question. I would say just try to be kind. You're going to make mistakes, but you'll be all right if you be kind.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And what would you say to someone who feels really lost or really trapped or stuck in their own shit right now?
I would say, I use this. I saw you're doing all this stuff for Marianne Williamson online, and I love her. And one of the things that I learned from her in my many, studying all the different great masters, which I believe her to be one. Wouldn't it be cool to see her as a president in the United States? But anything's possible.
I
And
know.
one practice I learned from her was. She said something to the effect of like, when you're going through some challenge or you're trying to control, just pause and say, I give my future to God.
I
And,
love that.
and I use that all the time when I'm caught, like, I got a big bill from the government, I got to pay taxes, I got to, whatever it is, like you have a friend that's sick and dying, and I'm like using my mental power to try and solve it. Or, even when I was down and out using, drinking a lot, using drugs, that kind of thing, you're praying like, dear God, if I could just get sober, I won't do this again. What if you could change that and just say like, I'm open, just show me what I need to do. My future is yours. And that has been a huge tool for me.
Oh
Just
my God, that makes me want to cry.
yeah, take me, take me. Like if it's death, if it's service, if it's whatever it is, take me, I'm yours.
Yeah, I really resonate with that because I met her at my rock bottom and I told her like all my shit. That was like 3 months after I got struck by lightning. And I met her at like an event and I was like going off, like with all my shit. And then she was like, just stop. Like, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. You're going to be fine. Like, return to love. That's what she told me.
Beautiful. I love it.
Yeah. And so that's why I feel so devoted to, sharing like her presidency, because no news it's been 3 days now and not a single news source has talked about Marianne Williamson.
It's bizarre, right?
I think the media can't touch the vibration.
Yeah, right. That's a good way of seeing it.
That's what came to me in my meditation. I was like, why the fuck is no one talking about it? It's because the media is so dense with propaganda and low frequency that she is coming from a higher elevation with her message and her purpose that the media can't even see it.
Yeah, I love that. What a cool way of putting it. And
Yeah,
that's what requires us to show up.
definitely. And that's why, like, what came through yesterday in my sadhana is like, we are the media. So I need to do what I can to like continue to be a leader, to share more of the principles and like through that, because especially in today's age of social media, it's like we really are the media. Like people are looking to influencers to figure out like how to navigate through these times. So I love that.
Jello Biafra from the dead Kennedys said, "Don't fear the media, be the media."
Fuck yeah. Amazing. So with that, I would love for you to share where we can find you and more about the Dharma Temple, especially because you said you have a lot of courses and stuff coming
Yeah,
up with that.
I'd be stoked to share those with you. The center is called the Dharma Temple. You can check out the dharmatemple.com. Check out the Dharma Temple on Instagram. And then on the Dharma Temple is where you can, this first course that is coming out, it's called Foundations of Freedom. And it's basically an 8-week course that helps people who may not know anything about yoga or meditation, or like how you could use some of the things we talked about today to create space for more freedom in your life, more prosperity in your life. And you do it week by week over 8 weeks. And that course can be available any day if you've finished all the shooting, and it's just a matter of getting it up on the site. So you could check that out at thedharmatemple.com. And then as far as this Japji project that I'm doing, when I finish this call, I'm going over to my friend who does all the music to finish the recording. I've already finished the English translation and the Gurmukhi, the transliteration, so anybody could learn to do the prayer, but it's written in a language that is really speaks to me. Because sometimes when you read some of the old texts, there's this underlying, like, the Lord and He is this, and it's like, that's an old way of thinking. And we don't want to throw all of that stuff away, because the essence of that is pure. And then the surface of it is the cultural part that I was talking about. If we can see through it to the universal and update the language, but still use the sound current, I think that's really important. And so that project should be available soon. And people can follow me also on Instagram at Tiaga Prem, and there'll be updates about when that comes out. We're going to do it as an app and an ebook and a hard copy book. So it depends how people would like to get in touch with that. But it's a powerful prayer. And then the last thing is the show that we're shooting starting in India is going to be called Through Lines. And we've got a Instagram now called Through Lines Media, also throughlinesmedia.com. So everything's that's a new thing. So you could keep an eye out for that. But those are all the things that I'm working on and how to find me.
Amazing. So one last thing, if there's something that's really on your heart that someone that needs to be shared and expressed through our conversation today, what would you have to say?
I would have to say that, if you are listening to this and you are like, oh, I feel like maybe I should do the practice, or maybe you've been introduced to Kundalini Yoga, but you think like it's kind of like a weird thing, or maybe you think like maybe it's not for me or whatever it is, what I would say is make yourself open and make your commitment to be like, I'm going to do everything I can to live in a state of awe, which means like just noticing the little things. Like, I'm sitting in the coffee shop right now and I can look at the people and they, there's people with different colors of hair and look at people like a sunset and look at your own body like a sunset. Like nobody goes up to the sunset and goes like, well, 10 years ago, I saw a sunset that was way better than this. I mean, that's an absurd way to behave. So if you can just learn to look at even your own self in a state of awe and acknowledge that you're a force of nature, that you are the earth, the water, the fire, the breath, you are vibration, sound, consciousness, and maybe that's just like paying attention to your breath, or go to Kundalini Yoga, it will work, or listen to this podcast. Oh, I should mention I have a podcast too called Revealing the Diamond, where I basically just spout off teachings, or I record all my lectures. You can check that out too.
Incredible.
Yeah. So live in a state of awe, make yourself open. Just there's a force that is greater than your own individual thinking mind that is going to take care of you if you just say, okay, I'm ready, take me.
Oh, it's so beautiful. Thank you so much for having this conversation. I love when I get to talk to my Kundalini brothers and sisters because they fucking get it. It's like they get it. They're understanding and they see what is the new paradigm, because we work every day on embodying that and to be that and to share through our radiance and through our truth of who we are. So thank you so much, brother. I appreciate you so much. And this was so lovely.
Thank you for having me. What an honor. We love listening to your podcast. My wife plays it in the car all the time, and I'm like, I love her. I love the way that she speaks. I love everything that you have to say. So thank you for the work you do. What a blessing.
Oh, thank you for seeing me. I really appreciate that. And I appreciate, I love seeing you and your wife always pop up on my feed in the Dharma Temple. I'm like, oh, hey. So I've been wanting, I know Chris is yelling at me too. So it's going to happen. But thank you everyone for tuning in. Go allow yourself to become more aware, allow yourself to really open up, and allow yourself to commit and devote to becoming your highest self, because the world is ready for your medicine. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you all soon. Sat Nam.
Sat Nam.